Hello, I am Chandler Klebs, and today I'm going to explain how forgetfulness refutes free will. See, some people define free will as something that is outside of that you do things independently of what's outside of your control that might be making you do something. And we're forced to do things that we don't want to do. But there's another definition that says that we have free will if we could have done otherwise than we did in the past. And this is a very interesting philosophical thing, but it's not just interesting. I mean, this is a matter of life and death. Because ultimately, if somebody blames someone for doing something or not doing something and assumes that they could have done otherwise, well, that causes them to blame that person and maybe hate that person. And see, here's the tricky thing is that this happens with my mom and I, she thinks that I'm being bad to her. Like, she thinks that I am trying to frustrate her, and she asked me why I did this or didn't do that, and I'm like, well, I forgot. And so, but she thinks that I'm doing it on purpose, and I'm not trying to forget. She tells me to do something, and I don't do it because I totally forgot. I have a lot on my mind. Or she says I'm not listening, but I try to listen, but I mean, I'm kind of absent-minded sometimes, and so I forget things. I don't remember sometimes what I was doing. I don't remember what she said, what somebody else said, and my memory isn't that great. And it's kind of like my boss before said everybody needs reminders. I'm like, well, yeah, people forget, and I was just thinking, people have this saying, forgive and forget. But really, I was wondering, maybe it's forgive or forget. Because ultimately, if something is not somebody's fault, because what they did was due to their poor memory, doesn't that kind of mess up the idea that you need to forgive them for something they did? Because if they did something or didn't do something because they forgot, which is another thing that's outside of our control. Like, we can't really remember what we did. What might be in part of our unconscious mind, our memory, because we need memories to function. Like, we can't do something if we don't remember we're supposed to do it. And I make mistakes all the time. I mean, people make mistakes. And it may be due to a lack of knowledge. They didn't know something. Or they may have forgotten something they learned, and they may not really be trying to do what they're doing. And so if somebody is doing something that they don't want to do because something is outside of their control, or because they don't remember that they could have done otherwise, maybe in a situation, so they could not have done otherwise. And it always comes down to, if you could have done otherwise, well, why didn't you? And so, my mom might ask me anything like, well, why did you lose this? Or why didn't you bring this? And you said you would do this. And I don't I don't make false promises to my mom and say I'm going to do something without the intention of doing what I say. But my memory isn't really that great, and I think it's very important for people to understand that unless you understand the circumstances that are outside of somebody's control, you have a tendency to blame them. And this blame, I don't know, I mean, to me, to forgive someone, as I've read in dictionaries, is to stop blaming them, grant forgiveness, pardon, excuse. And well, it's kind of interesting because ultimately, if somebody did something that is not their fault, if they could not have done otherwise than what they did, then does it really make sense to blame them? Does it make sense to punish someone? Does it make sense to get revenge on someone? Now, just because somebody may not be at fault for what they're doing, that doesn't mean that we have to let them do it. And that's why this whole idea that we don't have free will and that the universe is deterministic, that things happen a certain way, they do. Things happen before we existed, before we were conceived, that were outside of our control. You know, like, I didn't make my parents do sex. I mean, and if I could have stopped my father and mother from having sex, I probably would have stopped them. Because, I mean, well, I suppose that would have reduced my suffering, eliminated my suffering that has been caused in my own existence. But at the same time, if I hadn't been conceived and born, then I could not have traveled back in time before I was born. And so what I would like to do, perhaps, I might like to stop myself from existing sometime in the past, but I don't have that ability. I could not have done otherwise than I did. I could not have caused my parents to have sex or not have sex at a different time. I didn't choose what people did before I existed, and that's why it's so important to understand that if we try to blame ourselves for something that we did that we could not control, well, that's a big deal. I mean, and I don't blame my mom for forgetting that I forgot what she said. And I understand why she thinks that I'm making promises and then breaking them on purpose. I understand why she might feel that way, but it's just not true. It's just not the case. I mean, I love my mom, and she loves me. Sometimes it's easy to forget, though. It's easy to forget someone loves you when they say something unknowingly that hurts you. They may make a mistake. They may do something that just really makes you feel like they hate you. And I have difficulties with my mom. I mean, I'm sure that if I asked the question, you know, those of you who have grown up with parents, grandparents, siblings, friends, have you ever had a disagreement with someone? Have you ever had a misunderstanding? Well, yeah, then you know what I'm talking about. Because what if something is a misunderstanding? What if you think somebody's being evil or bad to you, that they're trying to hurt you? But if that's not true, it might help to know. Because when my mom understands that I'm not trying to hurt her with my words or actions, and I understand that she's not trying to hurt me, well, we get along better. We can get more done, and that's a thing to understand. Because really, I think that people need to communicate. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to communicate with people. When I talk to them about abortion or veganism, vegetarianism, when I talk to people, I'm trying to explain that there's a problem and can we work on a solution to this problem? And so the idea that we believe we could have done otherwise in all kinds of situations when we could not have done otherwise. Now what we did, well, we blame ourselves and we blame other people for stuff that's not their fault. And it's not fair, it's not just. And when you understand the relevance, the importance, you know, the extremeness of why it's important that we don't really have free will in that we can't control everything that happened in the infinite past before we existed. And I get that, and it's a reality that's settling in. You know, like I get it, but at the same time, it's hard to live by this reality. And that's why, you know, partly why I'm recording videos to help me remember stuff I forget. And so I'm thinking, you know, maybe it's not forgive and forget. Maybe it's forgive or forget. So just think about that for a while. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I guess I'll record more if I remember to. Bye.